Hi everyone, welcome to Mathematically Inclined. I am Neha, your math mentor, and today we would be discussing inverse trigonometric functions part 2. In case you haven't seen the video on part 1, then I would recommend you to do that first. I'll be leaving the link for the same in the description box below. Now, once again, all these videos would be free of cost. So like, share and subscribe. Now let's get straight to what we have for today's agenda. First, we would be discussing questions on principal value branch of an inverse trigonometric function. Second, finding domain of the inverse trigonometric functions. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. So before we start with this segment, let's quickly recapitulate what we discussed under inverse trigonometric function and its principal value branch. I did discuss few techniques to remember this. I hope they made sense. So now, if you are ready with this table, then I am ready with the volley of questions which I am throwing at you. Let's get started with the very first question. Now, if you have sine inverse of root 3 by 2, just assume it to be as some theta. This implies root 3 by 2 is equal to sine theta. Now, which is the angle which is lying in your principal value branch where I get my value as root 3 by 2? Well, the answer is straight. It is pi by 3, which also belongs to the PVB. Similarly, dealing with the second question now. For the second question, if we have sine inverse of minus root 3 by 2 equal to theta, that means once again sine theta is minus root 3 by 2. Now, which is that quadrant which would give us the sign as negative? Now you know our value, our principal value branch is just lying between minus pi by 2 and pi by 2. So if it's not the first quadrant, it has to be in the fourth quadrant. So this gives us the answer minus pi by 3, which once again lies in the PVB. That's it. Now moving on to the third question. It says cos inverse of minus 1 by root 2. Now, if I assume it to be theta once again, you do realize it's a negative angle. Please remember, the PVB for cos inverse is 0 to pi. So that means this time you cannot just write the negative angle minus pi by 4 and do away with. So that means we have to bring it to first or the second quadrant. We all know the cos function is negative in the second quadrant. So this could be written as cos of pi minus pi by 4, which gives us the answer cos 3 pi by 4. So this implies theta is 3 pi by 4, which once again satisfies the condition of being in the principal value branch. Moving on to the fourth question now. You're given sine inverse of cos 3 pi by 4. Let's simplify this bracket first. So this becomes sine inverse. If you remember the value directly, good. Else just convert this to cos of pi minus pi by 4, which being in the second quadrant is bound to give us a negative answer. So this leaves us with minus 1 over root 2, which is minus pi by 4, which once again belongs to the principal value branch. Talking of the fifth question now, once again we start with the brackets, the innermost bracket first. Sine inverse of root 3 by 2 is going to be 60 degrees, that is pi by 3. Now cos of 60 degrees or cos of pi by 3 is 1 by 2, and what is sine inverse 1 by 2? Pi by 6, which again is in the PVB. Let's have a look at an equally simple question 6. So solving the innermost bracket, sine of minus pi by 2 would give us minus 1. If you want to assume it to be theta, please go ahead and do that. If you've already become a pro doing these questions without dealing with theta, please do that. So in case, let's say I assume it to be theta, this means tan theta is minus 1, which gives us the answer minus pi by 4. For the reason, this again lies in the principal value branch. Looks like a long question, isn't it? But trust me, it's very simple. Please see, once again starting with the innermost bracket, we write tan inverse of 1 as pi by 4. Now dealing with this bracket, it gives us the answer. Cos pi by 4 is 1 over root 2. Sine inverse of 1 upon root 2 gives you the answer pi by 4, and hey, cot pi by 4 you know is 1. Wasn't that too easy? Okay, have a look at question 8. Once again, if I assume this to be theta, this tells us secant theta is minus 2. Secant theta happens to be just the inverse of your cos theta. So if cos theta has to be minus half, that should ideally give us the answer minus pi by 3 for this. So if I say it's minus pi by 3, you can question and say, well, that is wrong. Why? Because secant inverse has 0 to pi minus singleton pi by 2 as its PVB. So that means we have to do something else. And it's as simple as that, that you have to bring it back to the second quadrant, since this is lying only in the first and second quadrants. So we can express this angle as secant of pi minus pi by 3, which leaves us with the answer secant 2 pi by 3, and thus we have theta is equal to 2 pi by 3, which definitely belongs to the PVB. Have a look at question 9. So it's just two questions clubbed together. Sine inverse of minus root 3 by 2 would give us the answer as minus pi by 3. And likewise, this would give us the answer minus pi by 3. Both of them lie in their PVBs respectively. So the answer is just minus 2 pi by 3. So let's try solving question 10. So secant inverse of 2 tan 11 pi by 6. Once again, we deal with the innermost bracket first. This is 11 pi by 6 could be expressed this way. Now if you remember your quadrant system and how each of the trigonometric functions behaved in them, you would know this is the fourth quadrant where the tan function is negative. So this gives us the answer as 2 tan minus pi by 6. What is your tan of 30 degrees? It's 1 by root 3. This would give us a negative answer. Now, you have to solve for this. You could assume it to be theta. Secant theta becomes minus 2 upon root 3, which is like taking sine theta to be minus root 3 by 2. You get the answer at 60 degrees. No, wait. Minus 60 degrees. So this one gives us the answer minus pi by 3, which once again lies in the principal value branch. Now moving ahead with the last two questions of this segment. Question 11. cot inverse of tan 3 pi by 4. You know you can express tan 3 pi by 4 as tan of pi minus pi by 4, which would give us a negative answer. So, this gives us the answer -1. Now this time, once again, since principal value branch for cot inverse lies between open 0 and pi, so I cannot just say the direct answer is minus pi by 4. You have to reduce it to this branch. What we do is, we change this to pi minus pi by 4. This is 3 pi by 4. If I assume this to be theta once again, now as we had just discussed, we have to ensure that it lies in its PVB. So, we can express this as cot of pi minus pi by 6. This means theta is 5 pi by 6, which belongs to the principal value branch. In this part of the video, we are going to talk about finding domain of an inverse trigonometric function. So let's see. This is the table we are going to refer to, where you have the inverse trigonometric function and the domain of all the functions respectively. Now let's have a glance at the initial 5 questions, and let's get started with the first one. Now, as we know that sine inverse of a function has its domain between -1 and 1, so based on that, this expression must lie between -1 and 1. That is it. Now when you solve, you add 3 on the two sides. This further implies 1 is less than x is less than 2. So domain for the given function happens to be the closed interval 1, 2. Now talking of the second question, here once again your sine inverse function lies between -1 and 1. So with the similar logic, we get minus x square must lie between -1 and 1. This implies x square, when we multiply throughout with a negative sign, would lie between -1 and 1. X square would be greater than equal to -1 and less than equal to 1, because the signs get interchanged. Please see, but we also know that for a real number, x square always has to be greater than equal to 0. So this implies 1 is greater than equal to x square is greater than equal to 0. Now focusing on this part of the question, we get x square is less than equal to 1. This means x square minus 1 is less than equal to 0. Now if you know how to directly deal with this, good. Else please make use of the number line method, where you plot the factors. If I factorize x square minus 1, we plot the factors -1 and 1 over here, and now check for each of the subintervals for the respective sign. For instance, between -infinity and -1, let us say I select a number, say -2, then -2 minus 1 gives me a negative answer, -2 plus 1 again gives us a negative answer, negative and negative make it positive. Considering this subinterval, let's say we choose a number 0. So 0 minus 1 and 0 plus 1 would give us the negative answer. Likewise, if you try taking another number from this subinterval, you would end up getting this subinterval to be positive. We are interested in getting the value as less than equal to 0. So this means our x must lie between -1 and 1, and this becomes the domain of the function. Now, if you have a look at question number 3, it's a mixture of two different different functions. In this case, what we generally do is the answer is always the intersection of the domain of the two. So that means if you all know sine inverse x has the domain as -1 to 1. Also, talking of, or rather recalling the domain of cos x function, it is a real number. Well, the answer is right in front of you. It is the closed interval -1 to 1. Now, once again, if you have a look at question 4, sine inverse has to lie between -1 and 1. So, this means root of x minus 1 has to lie between -1 and 1. But here, square root of a real number is never negative. This gives us the logic that x minus 1 has to be, root of x minus 1 has to be greater than or equal to 0. So, this tells us 0 is less than or equal to root of x minus 1 is less than or equal to 1. Now, in order to get x, the steps are simple. You just square all the sides and then add 1 throughout. And your answer is right in front of you, the closed interval 1, 2. Talking of question number 5, now once again it is sum of two different functions. So what we do in this case is, we already know the domain for sine inverse x is -1, 1. And talking of this, for sine inverse of 2x, you know your 2x would lie between -1 and 1. This implies x has to be between -half and half. So once again, fx, your domain of fx has to be the intersection of these two domains. That means -1, 1 intersection -half, half. The answer is once again in front of you. It is -half, half, the closed interval. Let's have a look at the last 6 questions for this segment. Having a look at question number 6. Now once again, cos inverse has to lie in the domain -1 to 1. So should be the expression inside. So 2x minus 1 must lie between -1 and 1. This means adding 1 to all the sides, this becomes, which further, after dividing with 2, becomes, so that's it. Domain for the first function is the closed interval 0 to 1. Alright, once again, it's an algebra of two functions, so you know the domain has to be the intersection of the two. Now, whether I take cos inverse 2x or I take twice of cos inverse 2x, by taking the intersection, we get the same answer. But still, you can split this as now you know the domain for sine inverse x has to be -1, 1. Talking of domain for cos inverse of 2x, you know 2x has to lie between -1 and 1, giving us the domain as -half to half. So the domain for each of them is -half, half. And I take it with this. So when you take intersection of everything, you get your, this is the reason, you get your answer to be, domain of the function is just -half, half. Wasn't that simple? Let's see question number 8. Now, talking of domain for your secant inverse, you know that the expression has to be either less than or equal to -1 or greater than or equal to 1. We'll apply the same logic here. So that means your 2x plus 1 either has to be greater than equal to 1 or has to be less than equal to minus 1. All you need to do is solve this. So this means 2x is greater than or equal to 0. This is simply giving us x is greater than equal to 0, and the other part gives us 2x is less than equal to minus 2, which means x is less than equal to minus 1. So from here you get the interval 0 to infinity, and from here you get the interval minus infinity to minus 1, which precisely becomes your answer. Therefore, the domain of the function becomes minus infinity to minus 1 union 0 to infinity. If you could see again, secant inverse x. This is the domain for secant inverse x. So this gives us the answer. That means domain of secant inverse x is minus infinity to minus 1 union 1 to infinity. And your domain for tan inverse x is simply r. So you know the answer has to be just this. So the domain for cot x is r minus all those n pi where n belongs to the set of integers intersection the domain of cot inverse x, which is all real numbers. When you take the intersection, you have got your answer. Alright, once again going ahead by domain of your cos inverse, we have to say that x square minus 4 lies between minus 1 and 1. This further tells us when you add 4 on all the sides, 3 is less than equal to x square is less than equal to 5. Right? You want to deal with them separately, you may do that. For instance, I divide this question under 2 now. So one of them tells us x square is greater than equal to 3. That means x square minus 3 is greater than equal to 0, which gives us x minus root 3 into x plus root 3 is greater than equal to 0. Okay. Once again, moving to your number line method, let's see what is the answer for this number line. Try looking for the values for each of these subintervals. So let's say we try to choose say minus 3 for this. So minus 3 minus root 3 gives us a negative expression, and minus 3 plus root 3 again gives us negative, which makes this interval positive. Now this one minus root 3 to root 3, let's say if I select 0, I'll get negative into positive, so it's negative, and lastly once again we get it to be positive. So from this, since we are interested in the intervals which are positive, so from this we get the answer as now moving to the next side. Here we have x squared is less than equal to 5, which again gives us x minus root 5 into x plus root 5 is less than equal to 0. Going by the same logic as in this part, you end up getting this time the domain to be minus root 5 to root 5. Now, you have to take the intersection for these two to give your final domain. How do we do that? Using a number line, it is very simple. If you see, alright, so I have root 5 here, root 3. That's it. So the first one gives us these extreme intervals, and the second expression gives us this. So whatever is the common part between them is your final answer. So domain for the given function over here is minus root 5 to minus root 3 union root 3 to root 5. That's it.